बहाने बना लो या पैसे कमा लो, ठीक है, आप दोनों नहीं कर पाओगे. Sales is something I always used to do. Like I started my first venture when I was probably 6 years old. Made trump cards when I was 16 years old. Made the board game on the stock market, when I was 16 years old. It says tiny to 10x. Okay, so the path to 10x has to be built up with tiny steps, tiny actions and all that. But what the 10x rule states is this: that जितना भी अभी आपने सोचा, actually आपको उससे 10 गुना ज़्यादा करना पड़ेगा उस चीज़ को achieve करने के लिए. People always say, oh, I'm a D2C, I'm a D2, I'm a B2B, I'm a B2C. I'm like, and this I learned from another friend, okay? It's about person-to-person connection, right? Yeah. And I went up to Grant Cardone and I said, I'll be your first licensee. So he called Jared. Jared was his VP and he said that एक plain कागज़ लेके आ और इसे sign करा कि जितना भी हम मांगेंगे ये देगा. In July of 18, I get a call from Jared and he said, this is the amount, transfer the money and we can go ahead and get started and you'll be our first licensee in Asia. And I did. I called my financial planner. I said, "जितना है सब बेच दे." And he's like, "सब बेच दे." मतलब he says, who's then going to pay for your son's, college education?
In today's episode, our guest is Mr. Gaurav Bhagat. Gaurav is an entrepreneur, an investor, a TEDx speaker, and a growth mentor. He started his entrepreneurial journey with only rupees 10,000 and went on to build one of Asia's largest corporate gifting company, Consortium Gifts. He got his sales training from the legendary Grant Cardone. And today, through the Gaurav Bhagat Academy, he helps entrepreneurs scale faster and lead better. While talking to Gaurav, I found his ideas on life and business quite fascinating and out of the box. So ladies and gentlemen, help me in welcoming Mr. Gaurav Bhagat.
Thank you for doing what you're doing for the startup ecosystem. And when you called and reached out, I said I have to be here. So thank you so much for having me.
So why don't we straight away dive into this conversation by first knowing who is Gaurav Bhagat?
Okay, and that's interesting because I always wondered, how can I summarize who I am and what I do with an acronym which is, not too hard to decipher. And I think it happened on a flight to Bombay, a few months ago. And somebody asked me, who you are and what do you do. And I came up with the acronym of SPICE. And in case some of your viewers are wondering, masala wala spice, well, not really that spice, but it actually stands for speaker. That's the S. The podcaster, because I do have a couple of podcasts of my own.
Yeah.
Investing has been something that's been very dear to me ever since I was like a 16-year-old. So, the investor. The C is a consultant because, we do come in and consult, various organizations, and E is an entrepreneur. I run Consortium Gifts, which is, one of India's top gifting and promotional product companies. And of course, the Gaurav Bhagat Academy, along with a couple of other things as well. So hence, the entrepreneur piece. And I'd say in a nutshell, that's how you can probably summarize, who I am and what I do.
Okay. So what we'll do is we'll double click on each one of them, one by one.
Sure.
Let's start with Consortium Gift, which is your main company, right?
Right.
So tell us a little about it. Are you the first generation entrepreneur? You started?
So Consortium is a company that I did start, though I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My grandfather, ran a pretty successful business. My dad did as well. But Consortium is a company that I started when I was 19 years old. I was, in the first year of college. The family had gone through a big financial, crisis, and it was time to step up and do something. And that's where Consortium really started. We started out by making gym gloves and then moved into making computer mouse pads. Those computer mouse pads, Y2K was coming, so it went to Compaq and a whole bunch of other guys. And of course, with a lot of ups and downs, as any startup, would really have. It was a roller coaster journey. But I'd say today we're probably one of the top companies in the country, if not in Asia.
Okay.
And it's been a super journey, but lots of ups and downs along the way as well.
So how did you diversify from there? What all other ventures you have right now?
Okay, so basically, as I mentioned, we have Consortium Gifts, which is the key one.
Okay.
In 2017, Consortium was being trained by a gentleman called Grant Cardone. Now, Grant Cardone is Mr. 10X. You see that on my label as well, right? And he's one of the world's top, sales coaches and trainers. And when we started working with him in 2017 July, by December we'd actually doubled our top line. By using 10x methodologies, 10x sales systems. And in 2018, in February, I actually went and met Grant Cardone. I wasn't supposed to meet him. I was, I had a free seat in the back of an event, but somehow I managed to, get myself into a talk that Grant Cardone was doing with 25 very select people. And I managed to get into that room, they said, Kismat hai, destiny hai, I don't know what it was. And they started talking about the fact that he might want to license his content. He might want to like get his message to reach now. He keeps saying 7 billion people around the world. And I'd been a guy who's been doing sales bachpan se. Like I started my first venture when I was probably 6 years old. Made trump cards when I was 16 years old. Made the board game on the stock market, when I was 16 years old. So sales is something I always used to do. I used to travel everywhere, walk into toy shops, and they said, "तेरे मम्मी पापा कहाँ हैं?" I said, "मम्मी पापा से क्या बात करनी? मेरे से बात करो." तो like आप तो बच्चे हो, ऐसे टेंशन मत लो. So hence I was always selling. So the penchant for selling, along with just the fact that लोग बोलते हैं यार तू अच्छा बोलता है, जब when you talk people listen, and Grant Cardone, all three of them came together, and I went up to Grant Cardone and I said, "I'll be your first licensee." So he called Jared was his VP, and he said that एक plain कागज लेके आ और इसे साइन करा कि जितना भी हम मांगेंगे ये देगा. Okay, and I said, done deal, because I was, so convinced that I'm actually going to go ahead and do that. In July of 18, I get a call from Jared, who is his, now president, that time VP, and he said, this is the amount, transfer the money, and, we can go ahead and get started, and you'll be our first licensee in Asia. And I did. I called my financial planner. I said, "Jitna hai sab bech de." And he's like, "Sab bech de." Matlab, he says, "Who's then going to pay for your son's, college education and all of that?" And I'm like, "Doesn't
Was
matter."
it such a massive amount?
At the time, it was a massive amount.
Okay.
Right?
And you're talking about 2018.
Yeah. So, and it can't be something I could take out from my company, because the company is a private limited company, so I can't draw from the company. I have to take it out of my personal savings. So I liquidated my savings, I sent across the money, became, Cardone's first licensee.
Okay.
And today people ask me, यार तू वो gifting वाली company भी चलाता है कि अब सिर्फ training वेनिंग करता है? So it's actually the Cardone licensing, the 10x, the speaking, the consulting have actually, as far as the personal brand goes, have become even better than and bigger than gifting, even though it contributes a tiny amount of the revenue.
Okay.
Yeah.
So was it a 10x journey for you?
Oh, 100%. 100%, and 10x like many times over. And the 10x ki khasiyat ye hai, the 10x is the goalpost that keeps moving. You achieve that 10x, okay, and then it's like, it's not done and dusted. Okay, now the goalpost has moved, and now you have to achieve the next 10x and the next 10x. So 10x ka beauty ye hai that it never actually stops. The goalpost actually keeps, moving and keeps moving further back.
Interesting. So we talked about consortium gifts, then the GBA, which is Gaurav Bhagat Academy.
Correct.
Then you have any other venture beyond this?
So of course we have the podcast. The podcast now have a pretty large following, and they have been, of course, monetized. And along the podcast we have, some revenue generation, setups that happen as well. Our other businesses, like I said, are more on the space of, just coming in and speaking. We have something that we're doing right now in the PR and, the marketing aspect as well. But primarily, I'd say these are the places that have, my maximum attention. And then some global organizations on which I'm on the board, etc. But primarily that's what it is.
I think out of all this that you mentioned, our audience, because essentially the niche that we focus on is startups and entrepreneurial journey, people who are taking those journeys are the ones who find this very interesting, and they would be very interesting to know and understand this 10x concept in a little better way. But before we jump on that, for the interest of viewers, could you give a little bit of information on Grant Cardone? Who is he? What is the speciality that he carries? Why is he so famous?
Yeah, it's a very interesting story. And Grant Cardone, growing up, lost his father very early in life. And his role model at that time, was his older brother, who while on a rig, in an oil rig, actually died as well. So as a result, I think Cardone at the time was, maybe in his late teens. So he got, very affected, and he got into substance abuse, alcohol, drugs, all of that. To the extent that, he actually got thrown out of his house. And, his mother said, never ever come back. The rehab guy, who he was in rehab, drug rehab, he would keep saying that, aata hai, jata hai, aata hai, jata hai. So one time he told him, he says, okay, you're going, but tu wapas zarur aayega. And Cardone at that time said, from today on, I've made a decision that I'm never coming back. And I'm going to make something out of my life. And of course, what could he do? So he said, let me get into sales. And there's this concept of professional versus amateur. So amateur salesperson just हाथ पाँव मार रहा है, चल गया तो चल गया, आज गद्दे बेच रहा हूँ, कल गाड़ियाँ बेच रहा हूँ, फिर insurance बेच रहा हूँ. So just kind of move from industry to industry. But at one point he drew a line and he said, I will now make a decision to become a professional salesperson. He was around 25 years old by this time. To give context, by the time he turned 62, which was a few years ago, Grant Cardone's net worth was actually $1 billion.
Okay.
And he attributes it all to sales. Okay. And of course, through sales, he became one of the top salespeople. Forbes has actually voted him as a #1 salesperson in the world. Okay. Runs Cardone Enterprises, which, has thousands and thousands of, clients and customers, runs Cardone Capital. So many more businesses now, Cardone Ventures. but net worth of billion. Imagine एक बंदा जो घर से निकाला गया और उसकी माँ ने बोला तू चोरी करता है, पैसे वैसे निकालता है, मतलब threw him out of the house, would actually go out and become a $1 billion net worth individual with his company's worth actually so much more. So that's Grant Cardone, and the thing is, despite all of that, very grounded, very approachable. Like, here sometimes you see these trainers and coaches and you try and approach them and you're 5-6 bouncer honge, wo dhakka dhukka maar ke idhar udhar kar denge. Believe it or not, Grant Cardone can be approached and he'll have a conversation with you, he'll hear you out. He's always willing to, help, doing a lot for, children, doing a lot for, college kids, school kids, startup entrepreneurs and all of that. Amazing guy, and if people don't follow him on social media, definitely do go back and check some of his old content. I mean, some of the stuff that he's put on YouTube, on Insta, priceless, priceless. And and when I met him, I said, boss, this is what it is. And of course, I brought his content to India. थोड़ा बहुत tweak करना पड़ा because जो USA में चलता है वो हो सकता है इंडिया में इतना applicable ना हो, but fundamentally insane. And I've seen a lot of people. No one is as good as what he delivers, and I think one of the key principles is that you have to give to get first. So give first and then you will get. So the entire givers gain, of course you've been a BNI member as well. Serve, don't sell, give without expecting anything in return. So all of these things are core principles of Cardone's philosophy, which have been brilliant.
So now let's move a little bit ahead in this journey and understand you've taken the license of Grant Cardone in India, and your academy is the only academy in India to have this license.
Yeah.
So what kind of training you guys do?
So primarily sales. Okay. So sales training is what we do, since that is Cardone's content. We run a few programs. One program we run for SME entrepreneurs or SME companies, which is a 10x sales boot camp. 2-day boot camp happens here in Noida itself, and at the academy we have between 20 to 35 entrepreneurs and their team members who come in, and it's 2 days deep dive, all things sales.
Okay.
Right? So right from the mindset, like sales se log darte hain. When I go in and tell people, okay, sales, or you want to explore a career in sales. I was at a college recently and I said that how many 100 girls in the room, I said how many of you want to explore a career in sales or something to do with sales? Not one hand came up. Not one hand came up. Imagine 100 people, right?
Yeah.
So people are so scared of sales. और क्यों डरते हैं? Because they're like, यार एक बार ये पिक्चर थी रॉकेट सिंह सेल्समैन हो गया और उस बंदे ने क्या बोला कि और कुछ नहीं मिला इसलिए मैं सेल्स के अंदर घुस गया, right? So as a result of that dialogue, I think that तो destroyed most people's inclination towards sales. Parents tell their kids that sales में तो नहीं जाना है और कुछ भी कर लो sales में नहीं घुसना. But the funny part is that everything in life is a sale.
Yeah.
Right? Convincing a boy or a girl to go out with you, it's a sale. Right? Getting your parents to give you an extended deadline, is a sale. Getting, that job, getting that salary,
from the
negotiating.
Moment, actually, the
sale.
Moment we are born, from that moment on,
right,
we are selling, right? We are salespeople. A small kid, an infant is trying.
Yeah.
And lying on bed with its siblings and crying harder to get the attention of his mother.
So true.
So that's sales only, right?
So true. Yeah.
From that moment on, till the moment our journey ends, eventually all the time we are selling something, right? 100%. We're selling our ideas, our thoughts. 100%. So this fear of sales, I don't really understand, because we all are salespeople.
And I figured out some of the top reasons क्यों लोग sales से डरते हैं. Okay, one of the top reasons is the fear of rejection.
Yes.
अगर हम मांगेंगे तो हमको ना सुनने को मिलेगा.
बिल्कुल.
And that ना सुनने को मिलना, right? I think that really scares a lot of people. Youth today is very fearful of accountability. Okay, they're fearful of targets. Now the thing is, these are things that you can't run away from, and if you accept and adapt, and I always say, like Mountain Dew का ad है, डर के आगे जीत है, right? So I always say, face your fears, okay? Go out there and overcome these fears, and great things will happen for you. Because you could be doing any career, but sales is still going to play an integral part, of your growth in that domain.
Yeah, and I think, as you rightly mentioned, people are afraid of rejection, primarily because they take rejection as a comment on their own personalities or weaknesses. They feel I got exposed. Whereas if you learn to detach this from your own self and look at this as an event that had an outcome, you can actually change the outcome, right?
100%.
Yeah.
And the point is that we'll always face rejection. It's a part of life.
Yeah.
And just to run away from that, I think is doing yourself, a big disservice.
Yeah.
So थोड़ा thick skin अपना, sales के अंदर होना चाहिए, life के अंदर थोड़ा thick skin होना चाहिए. I think that aspect is important.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. Now, tell me a little bit about this GBA, Gaurav Bhagat Academy. Right. How many students you have, and what is it that you teach there?
So over the course of now we're talking about 2018 November is when we started this. So now we're almost 7.5 years into our journey. uh, huge number of students. I mean, so let's say the boot camp, where I say 25 to 35 people would actually come in. We've done almost 39 editions of the boot camp.
Okay.
So at an average of 30 people, I'm saying 1200 log to wahin se aa gaye honge. Right. Apart from that, of course, there've been consulting gigs, there've been speaking gigs, I've spoken at conferences. The MDRT conference in Boston is the largest insurance conference in the world. While 7,000 people come into the main stage, my stage had 1,100 people. So there've been rooms as big as that. When I've gone in and spoken for HDFC Bank in Manila or Hong Kong, places like those. I mean, there also you're probably talking about 1,000, 1,100, 1,200 people.
Yeah.
Ballpark, I would say on the student side, where people that we've actually gone ahead and helped. Like you had Pankaj on your show, in the last podcast, which you're just looking. So Pankaj Marchandani's also, been one of our students.
Yeah, he'll be glad to hear that you came. His guru came.
So, I mean, super guy, and I think great products. I know that they're really,
Yeah.
building and all of that. A lot of innovation there. So I would say we have in excess of about 3,500 to 4,000 people that we worked with closely. And then, of course, there have been thousands that we've, impacted in other ways with speaking sessions and, all of that as well.
So, for the benefit of audience, why don't we dwell a little bit on this concept of 10x? And
Sure.
if people who are looking at you and looking at this podcast and thinking that I'm in this journey and I'm clueless,
Yeah.
I don't know how to make it 2x. I'm struggling day in, day out. And he's asking me to think 10x. So, what is it that you would ask them to do? How should they proceed on this journey?
So it's, of course, like you mentioned, it's a journey, it's a process, and one of the things that you see on one of my wristbands over here, it says tiny to 10x. Okay, so the path to 10x has to be built up with tiny steps, tiny actions and all that. So like I have Grant Cardone's license, I'm also licensed in another person's concept, and this is BJ Fogg, and BJ Fogg wrote a book called Tiny Habits. Right? Atomic Habits का नाम सबने सुना होगा, like James Clear, Atomic Habits, everyone's heard that. But the original guy, the guy who taught the course in Stanford, is actually BJ Fogg. Okay, and BJ talks about how tiny actions will get you to that big number. So a lot of time when I tell people what 10x is, वो तो वहीं डर जाते हैं, बोलते हैं भाई ये तो नहीं हो पाएगा. Okay, so would you like to know what actual 10x is?
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to do the exercise together? What I want you to do is close your eyes. Okay, so your eyes are closed, my eyes are closed. And I'd say, okay, Sriwant, now think about that one thing that you want. Your eyes are closed. Think about that one thing, that you want to achieve. It could be a turnover number. It could be a home. It could be a car. Could be that, big client that you want. So think about that one thing that you really want. Thought about it?
Yeah.
Okay, now think to achieve that, number or that client or that thing that you thought about. How much action would you have to take? How much activity would you have to do? कितनी meetings करना पड़ेगा? कितना धंधा close करना पड़ेगा to achieve that one particular milestone? Okay, just I'm quiet for 5 seconds. Just think about doing some of those things that I just mentioned.
To be very honest, it's a lot of fog.
Okay.
It's a lot of fog.
Okay.
Primarily because wherever we are sitting, whatever number it is,
right.
And when I think of 10x, the path looks foggy, unclear, hazy.
Of course.
And it looks like we'll have to really go to the back end.
Sure.
And create something very systematic and organized. And that's the only way you can eat this elephant by pieces, right?
Agreed. But moti, like I said, so the thing is, okay, that suppose you want to, okay, let's say you're at X, let's say you're at 5 crores right now, and you want to go to, let's say 25 crores or 30 crores. And I say, okay, what's it going to take for that? She's saying, okay, I'm going to have to pick up, like 30 more clients. I'm going to move to, more cities, bring in more people.
Probably
so, काफी कुछ आपको करना पड़ेगा.
तो काफी जो भी उसके elements हैं, जो उस 5 करोड़ को लेके आ रहे हैं, उन सबको probably 10x करना पड़ेगा और उसके आगे और पीछे net बनाने पड़ेंगे ताकि वो collapse ना करे, right? So, because each pillar has a capacity. Let's say I have a salesman, he has a capacity to do 2 meetings. Now we're asking him to do 20 meetings. It's impossible. You'll have to create a team of 3 more and supervisor and things like that. So entire structure has to be,
process has to be,
process and structure has to be made, right?
So what the 10x piece is, so again come back to that one thing that you thought of and the actions that you would have taken. So now you're already thinking, अरे यार इसके लिए तो एक बंदे से नहीं होगा, 5 चाहिए होंगे, उसके लिए एक process चाहिए होगा. So it's already quite a bit of work. But what the 10x rule states is this, that जितना भी अभी आपने सोचा, actually आपको उससे 10 गुना ज़्यादा करना पड़ेगा उस चीज़ को achieve करने के लिए. Okay, so you have to do 10 times of what you thought you need to do to
this
achieve.
This is exactly why I said it's foggy. I know it's
right. And the point is, for a lot of people at that point, when I say, oh, you have to, have, and it's not about just being, Dhoni ki tarah aake match ke aakhir over mein aap chauke chhakke maar rahe ho. It has to be consistently done.
Correct.
So like Rahul Dravid, you're coming out there and you're consistently, making those runs, taking those actions. And for a lot of people, when life happens, when just issues are happening and everything else, it just kind of falls off. So I'd say 10x is the standard, but it takes a process to kind of get there. Hence I say tiny to 10x. Okay, so it has to be smaller actions that you're going to have to take. It's going to have to be, like you said, how do you eat an elephant? Okay, is one bite at a time. So just like that, even to get to 10x, it has to happen with, tiny actions. It has to happen with, various steps you'll take in various areas. And of course, I'm sure that's going to come out in our conversation. But just to give context, that 10x is not an easy standard. जब कोई ये बैच पहनता है, तो मतलब लोग बोलते हैं भाई मतलब कुछ अचीव करने के लिए जो करना चाह रहे हो, आप संकी हो, पागल हो, बीमार हो जाओगे, मर जाओगे, मतलब all of those things will come your way. So 10x is a hard standard to meet. But even today, like I said, the people who are on that journey and who are achieving 10x levels, they are a little sunky, they are a little crazy.
They have to be.
That passion is very, very important.
Now, one of the question which comes to my mind is, there are different kind of industries, right? So let's say you are in manufacturing. We are producing these cups.
Sure.
And we have certain clients and, we are talking about 10x.
Yeah.
Then the road becomes probably little clear to me, although I'm not in manufacturing, but I'm just trying to think from different industry perspective.
Correct.
The common sense tells me that we'll have to increase our machines, we'll have to do more reach out, and the product, it's easy to replicate into 10x, right? But when you think of something more delicate and intricate, like let's say a service, which is, let's say, dependent on people and their core competencies and managing emotions and things like that, then taking it to 10x looks a lot more complicated. Am I correct in that assumption that, moving 10x is easier in certain fields and more difficult in certain fields?
The interesting part is that a lot of people today believe that in the area of, let's say software as a service, so, with now AI coming, as it is. So, if you look at, certain companies that have popped up, like look at something that, we're all the time. Look at WhatsApp. You look at the teams that, WhatsApp actually had, prior to the acquisition and how they were able to actually scale up. So there's one school of thought that actually believes that it's actually easier to scale a services business than to scale a product business. Like you said, agar hum ye coffee mug bana rahe hote, so what were our options? Okay, ceramics is one of the hardest lines. Okay, I know because our family's been in ceramics, for a few generations. And just the fact is the rejection rates that you have, the furnaces that are required. Ab jaise, Iran ka chakkar chal raha hai, so furnace oil is not coming in or gas is not coming in, depending on what you're firing with. You might not decide to do in-house manufacturing, you might do contract manufacturing. Wahan nakhre hain, labor ke nakhre hain, ye wo.
Correct.
So much can actually go wrong on the manufacturing side also. Hence it's almost become, even some of the largest companies that we know, and we're talking about FMCG companies, you of course been associated with so many consumer brands yourself. You would see that how even a levers or a racket is actually contract manufacturing so much of this stuff because it's nahi chahiye jhanjat of doing all of those things in-house as well. So to my mind, manufacturing has a lot of pieces which sometimes actually make it a lot more daunting. Today in the D2C space, where we have so many startups, right, and you see so many brands that are coming up in skincare, in food, in har brand, like Shark Tank mein jao to matlab ek ke baad ek, matlab I think in an episode of 5 there are probably 3 or 4 D2C brands only. But a lot of these guys have taken the contract manufacturing route because they don't want to have the jhanjat of manufacturing in-house and all of that. But I think some of the things that are kind of common over there, that you require in both spaces. One is obviously people. You have to have good people on your team to scale. So I think people is very, very important. Documented processes is very, very important. So be it services or be it manufacturing, I think processes are going to play a very big role as well. So people, processes, I believe partnerships is also a very important P. So, probably talking about the 4 Ps here now. Partnerships, so in terms of the vendors that you have, how your go-to-market strategies, who's going to be marketing you. You run a fantastic digital marketing, business as well. So who's going to be putting you on Instagram, getting you in front of, the customer. So those kind of partnerships, matter a lot. Your vendors that you have, your supply chain, your distribution, your courier and logistics companies, that are getting the goods across, into the market in a timely manner. So I think partnerships play a very big role as well. So people, process, partnerships, and I think then also it's in a way also the placement side of things, where it's the marketing. I think these are things that play an important role from my perspective.
Okay. So someone who is looking at this journey and trying to go, let's say 5x then 10x, what would you ask him to do first? What is it that he should start with, and in terms of sequence of events and sequence of actions,
Right.
where should he start first?
So I think one of the things which is key is obviously identifying a need in the market. Why do people actually go out and buy a product or service? One is obviously there's a need that needs to be addressed, the problem that has to be solved, or they fall in love. Like Apple का बंदा Apple क्यों खरीदता है? Android का बंदा Android पे क्यों रहता है? Because they just fall in love with the ecosystem. So I think the first thing that you need to see is that is there a genuine need that's going to be there beyond just your your internal ecosystem. Like आसपास के दोस्त यार family तो बोलेंगे हाँ भाई कमाल का product है, amazing, बस तू कर ले, you're passionate about this and it's also going to go really far. But beyond that inner circle, is there a genuine recurring demand that's going to be coming in for this product or service? So I think that aspect is very, very important. And every business that I've started, every area that I've got into, I knew that there's a need and there's going to be recurring demand. So I think that's going to be one of the key things that are really going to be there. Also, I think one has to look into this thing in terms of competitive ecosystem. What's really the ecosystem looking like? If it is, and they talk about red ocean and blue ocean, right? Red ocean is like, already so many guys उसके अंदर घुसे हुए हैं, आप भी बोल रहे हैं ठीक है जी मैं भी घुस जाता हूँ, and you have no differentiator, and this other company has maybe some funding, or it's already got a really long head start, and you're not being able to do something. I think in a red ocean you're going to struggle to differentiate yourself as well. A blue ocean, of course, is blue ocean, like open waters where there are no sharks, there is no bloodbath happening and all of that. So can you also identify a niche where you can come into, where you have a bit of a blue ocean strategy thing happening as well? And of course, I think after that it's just a process of keeping your ears and eyes open, listening to your customers, going on tweaking your offering, putting yourself out there in the world. They would always say जो दिखता है वो बिकता है. Today it's about जो ज़्यादा दिखता है वो ज़्यादा बिकता है. So how can you do and achieve something which I think is core for any startup is omnipresence. And omnipresence is you need to show up everywhere. And people said, okay, we don't have those marketing budgets, we don't have that much money to spend on Insta and Facebook and all that. But a lot of times you can just show up in places for free, right? Can you get onto podcasts? Can you get onto stages where you can be on panels? Can you just show up at events? And have even like today the government is subsidizing so many events. Like पीछे जब startup महाकुंभ हुआ था, I think okay, not the best managed, but the point is thousands of stalls were given out to people for free, where you could just come and display your products and services, and it cost you nothing apart from maybe some brochures and displaying your product and all of that. So even there is so much incentivization that's happening in the startup ecosystem, so you can actually show up without having to spend so much money today. And there are things like there are the blogs, and there is the Reddits and all of that stuff that you can do, social media which is free in terms of LinkedIn, etc. So much can be done on that side as well.
So Gaurav, when I searched for you on internet, I saw a lot of references of yours. You've been on Josh Talks, you've been on TEDx, you've been on many podcasts, and you've been very serious about personal branding. How important you think is personal branding for entrepreneurs today?
Like the most important. It's like the biggest differentiator. And again, this learning came to me from Grant Cardone, 2018 July. I'm with him. He's like, tell me about your Instagram. I said, my Instagram pe nahi hu. He said, tell me about YouTube. I said, YouTube pe nahi hu. He's like, phir tu chhod de, tera kuch nahi ho sakta. Because again, like omnipresence, like you have to show up in different places, right? And then, of course, made a conscious decision, go out and show up, on more and more platforms. So the truth is that why do people normally buy? Okay, because there is trust, because they see credibility. And I think that when you're starting up, and this is for everyone in the startup ecosystem, and all the companies that you guys and girls are building, just know that people want to connect with people. Okay, I mean it is in the end it's the human to human connection. And people always say, oh, I'm a D2C, I'm a D2, I'm a B2B, I'm a B2C. I'm like, and this I learned from another friend. Okay, it's about H to H. It's the
always
human to
P2P.
human. It's the human to human connection, the person to person connection, right?
Yeah.
So hence the thing is, if people start seeing you and you show up consistently and you show up with the one thing that's missing in the world today is authenticity. Okay, and people say, boss, what is the biggest disease in the world? I'm saying it's not COVID, it's not hantavirus, it's a trust deficit. People don't know who to trust, right? And I think when you start building up a brand, okay, and it's a brand that is authentic and people say, ये बंदा सही है, ये बंदी सही है. Okay, like just recently I did a podcast with Satyajit Henge. Satyajit Henge runs a company called Two Brothers Organic Farms. Super guy, right? Left his corporate job, came to his farm, started, really doing organic farming because, he really cared for that. And as a result, people just connect with him and his story. And now both the brothers, Ajinkya and Satyajit, have become Two Brothers Organic Farm. But the company is behind them, and they're getting, Nikhil Kamath is putting in money, Nitin Kamath is putting in money, top guys are putting in money. But the point is, it's about people. So I always tell people, build your, personal brand, and again, just be authentic. Be genuine. Build up that trust, and the spillover will be phenomenal. No matter what business you get into after that, it's just going to be phenomenal. Goodwill that'll come your way by virtue of that. So personal branding, very, very important.
Great. Now let's talk about one of the barriers of reaching 10x, right? And when we were talking, we also reached at certain pointers like finance. Finance has been one of the major barriers of this growth, right? And people always think कि भाई मैं तो छोटी सी कंपनी चलाता हूँ, मेरे को कुछ बड़ा करना है, उसके लिए पैसा लगेगा, मैं पैसा कहाँ से लेके आऊँ, कैसे करूँ, ले लूँगा, then अपने ऊपर liability डालूँगा, then कैसे होगा, कल को नहीं हुआ तो क्या होगा, what will happen? So all those things, all those cobwebs in the mind prevent action, right? They are the barriers of action. So what do you think about that?
So there's a lot of people who have a big aversion to debt. And that means going and picking up a loan. If I take my own personal journey, when I had to start consortium, there was no money. Dad had gone bust, and there was no money at all. So my first withdrawal was 10,000 rupees from a credit card. That was my starting capital to start, the entire process. When we scaled it a little bit more, we needed more money. Obviously, credit card money was not enough. And I went to Canara Bank, Sarata Vihar, a small branch. We still bank with them. And the guy's like, आपके पास collateral क्या है? I'm like, भाई मतलब खुद की company start की है, कुछ भी नहीं है. He said, मम्मी पापा ने LIC की policy तो ली होगी. Believe it or not, okay, I did have a LIC policy which I took when I was, born, and I actually went that and I pledged that. And against that, first they gave us 2 lakhs, and then they gave us another 4 lakhs. So that 6 lakhs actually became, the collateral with which, we built the company. Little by little, we kept adding up. Then we took a loan against our inventory. Then we bought our first office in Noida. We took a loan against, that office. We bought a small home. We took a loan against that home. So I think our entire piece was that we knew we were onto a good thing. We knew the only thing holding us back was capital. But like I said, started with drawing 10,000 on a credit card. Okay, then going and pledging a policy. Today the thing is, the options for entrepreneurs today, especially in the startup ecosystem, tremendous. Okay, and I'm not saying that you have to go down the route of letting equity go. I think a big mistake that people do, and you have debt and equity, right? Debt means you're going and you're taking a loan against a collateral, either collateral or non-collateral, doesn't matter. But a lot of people are actually letting equity go in their company too early. Okay, and they're letting sizable amount of stake go in their company. Some people are letting 5, 10, 15, 20% in their company go. I'm like, ideally don't let equity go early in the business. Okay, equity is something that you let go at a much later stage, when you've really evolved and all other doors are closed, or you have to go to the public market. So all of that kind of, I said then do equity. Like today you have SME IPOs and all that are coming out as well, where 25% of your equity has to be let go. I'm like, karna hai to bahut us time karna. But the point is, there are so many areas that you can actually go and pick up finance. Today the government has so many schemes for startups that are actually there. Banks are lending to startups. There are so many funds that are lending to startups. So I would say that entire finance piece, if you think you're onto a good thing and you have a business that you feel is scalable, don't fear debt. And for the longest time, I'd always say, oh, debt is my fuel, debt is my fire. Again, don't be able to. Eventually, it came to a stage where, we were picking up too much debt. And then, I made this, thought process that, okay, debt free in 23. That kind of, became our motto, which we did. Then we actually paid off, all our debt as well. Of course, now we've gone and bought like a super big factory. So we again have a little bit of debt. But the point is, that's good debt, because these are also assets that are going to be appreciating assets, and all of that as well. But again, my advice to everyone who's listening in the startup ecosystem, there's a lot of ways that you can raise capital. Don't raise capital by letting equity go. I think that's a mistake that people make early on, right? They come to Shark Tank, and the sharks are sitting there, and 5% मेरा, 10% मेरा, company pre-seed है, मतलब धंधा भी चालू नहीं हुआ, उस टाइम आप क्यों छोड़ रहे हो अपनी कंपनी को? right? So I think that's a big mistake that people are making, debt first over equity, okay? And if all doors have closed and nothing's happening and you have a deal where, okay, there is nothing else and equity has to be let go, only then go down that road. But ample sources of finance, okay, get into what's happening on, at startup ecosystem, startup events, see what's happening where, the government is also giving stuff, which is a great option
Government
to
is
look
super
at.
supportive these days, yeah?
Super supportive. Super supportive.
So that's a very good thing that you mentioned, that don't be afraid of debt. Do your research well, and if you're confident about what you're building, then taking a debt is not a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
Because if you look at big business houses also today, if you look at world's richest man, Elon Musk, he took a lot of debt to buy Twitter, right? So he could have bought it all cash down, but he didn't do that. So debt is the fuel which can actually make this fire grow bigger and bigger, but you need to know how to use debt.
Oh, 100%. Like, don't go out and, like some people, what happens is, and it's very interesting, there was somebody on my podcast recently, and they're like, when someone gets a funding round, they go and buy themselves a nice car, a nice watch, sometimes a nice home. We just saw someone who just went and bought, golf sets and a home in a really fancy place, and the entire thing, blew up on them. But the point is, they need to understand that when you take debt, by letting equity go, you have a responsibility to your investors, to your shareholders. Okay, and it's something that you pay back. It's something you still have to do the work. It's not that I have arrived and now, ab to ash ho gayi, ab to farm house jaake kharid raha hu. That's like the worst thing you can possibly do.
Yeah, so there are ways to do that. When you totally liquidate whatever equity you have, or you want to do IPO, you want to come out of the business, then probably that's the time, or time will come later, right? When your business is stable and it's grown to a certain level.
Like we're talking about Grant Cardone, okay? Today he has planes and helicopters and all of that. But know this, that all of that is paid through passive income. Right? And they struggled, like for the longest time, okay, they kept, both Elena and him, that's his wife, they kept it very, very basic. They won't eat out. They were living very simple lives, and everyone today sees a very opulent life, and they're like, bhai, uske paas to Gulfstream bhi hai, 2 helicopter bhi hai. But ये नहीं जानते कि ऐसे times भी थे जहाँ वो बाहर खाना नहीं खाते थे, right? Sometimes they had to even skip meals because they just didn't have the means to go out and do that. But as they start building assets, and that assets start generating passive income, rental income, interest income and all that, with those monies, they actually want to start buying some of these assets. So a lot of discipline is required as well on the finance side.
Now, let's touch upon another challenge or barrier, so to say, for this 10x growth is, I think, the goal setting. Many times, in the process of setting up goals, which we always want to create smart goals for ourselves, which is, and we've seen that happening in corporate also, that you try and grow 10% or 15%, 20%. Do you think with that kind of mindset, it's possible to achieve 10x, or goals should be crazy? How do you look at goal setting?
Super interesting, because one thing that's really close to my heart has always been, goal setting. I think I started my first book on goals, and I remember going into a Def called Market, and there was a Archie's gallery, and that's where I bought this book, and it was called the Book of Top Secrets, which you could lock and all of that. And that's where I first set my goals, and my goals were to get a certain amount in my school and start my investing, etc., etc. Since then, I've always done some form of goal setting or the other. It's interesting what you mentioned, that corporates tell us, and organizations tell us, keep your goals that are realistic. Goals are always are told to be SMART goals, which is specific. आज हम कहाँ हैं, हम कहाँ जाना चाहते हैं, specificity. Measurability, आज हम 5 कर रहे हैं, हमको 25 करना है. Okay, measurability. Attainability. Okay, that's the point where you say, okay, is it realistic? Is it possible to actually get to that particular piece? So the attainability, again, the R is the realistic piece, and the T is that there must be an expiry date. So you must say, okay, by so and so date I want to achieve it. So to my mind, goals can and should be following the SMART concept. Where I put in the crazy 10x thoughts is a vision board.
Okay.
So I've also been creating vision boards since I was in school, and I remember this other friend of mine who's like a very famous fashion designer now. So him and I would create a vision board, even sitting in class at that time, and then we've created many vision boards since.
Oh, so what exactly is a vision board, and how do you create that?
A vision board, first thing you want to write down is the things that you want on the vision board. Okay, like to give you an example, when I said I want to have a podcast with 100,000 followers, us time the podcast bhi nahi tha was, right? But I said, okay, podcast banayenge, 100,000 followers honge. I said, एक अपना चेक मैंने बनाया विद बैंक बैलेंस इतना होना चाहिए. एक घर खरीदूंगा इस एरिया के अंदर, उस घर की फोटो, ऐसी गाड़ी होनी चाहिए, like could be like a fancy car, like a Mercedes or a Tesla, whatever people really want, so a car की photo. So what I did is first I was listing out all the things. Then I went to the internet and I said, okay, इन चीज़ों की फोटो कहाँ से मिलेगी? तो अगर वो गाड़ी है तो उस गाड़ी की अपना फोटो निकाली, अगर एक घड़ी है तो उस घड़ी की फोटो निकाली, if there's a bank balance, then अपने check का write out the numbers of that, so you can write out that check. And then what I did is I went to a PowerPoint and I went and I placed all these pictures on that, created into a PDF and took a printout. Okay, and when I printed it, I put that vision board everywhere, on my cupboard, my wife's cupboard. My wife is like, why is your vision board on my cupboard? I'm like, nahi, hamari bhi to photo hai. So there was a photo, me and hers, and saying that, oh, great, happy life. Children. I have a couple of children. One of them is pretty similar age as your child. And hence, so a picture of them saying happy family. So all of these things, the car that I wanted. And at that time, a lot of it was crazy. Kabhi bhi nahi hoga. But then 4, 5, 6 years down the line, it started happening. Those things started like falling in magically, or of course, by the actions that were being taken by the goals. So I recommend have two things. Let those goals be kind of realistic. Let those goals, even if it's a long-term goal, it can be, okay. And I say goals should be in 4 durations, okay. In my system, short-term, okay, medium-term, long-term, and legacy. A short-term goal is something that you'll achieve in 3 months, okay. A medium-term goal is something you'll achieve in 1 year, okay. A long-term goal is something you achieve in 5. And a legacy goal is 10 years and beyond. Okay, so I say goals should normally happen, in these 4 durations. Also, people say, where should we set these goals? Like, should it be a work goal? Should it be a finance goal? Should it be a relationship goal?
Correct.
So in the system that I, created, and we also teach the GBA, is that we have 6 areas. Okay, so first is work, because your work is going to be the primary area that you focus on. So if you're a student, obviously it could be your education. If you're a startup, it could be about your startup. If you're established business, it's still work. So work is the first. Once work is going well, you'll have some money. Then you have a finance goal. So where are you going to take that money and put it for an opportunity that pops up in the future? And how will you leverage that opportunity as well? Third is a health goal, because if health is lost, everything is lost. We saw this in the pandemic, and thereafter as well. So you can have all the money in the world, but if your health is gone, boss, everything is gone. The fourth area is a lifestyle goal. Okay, maybe that car you want to buy, that watch you want to buy, that family holiday you want to take, that house you want to buy. So the lifestyle piece, becomes very, very important. The fifth is a mental goal. Okay, mental goal would also be, who you want to, be as a person, things you want to read, learn, start a podcast, gratitude and giving back. So even charitable causes that you want to support, right? Like you said that Startup Cafe for me is a give back. Right, so that's for you. It's a mental goal that you really had. That I want to touch so many people, have so many subscribers, reach out to so many people. And the last one is, why do we do everything that we do? It's family and relationships. Okay, what do you want your family to say about you? What do you want your colleagues to say about you? What do you want your clients to say about you? What kind of relationships do you want to have? So 4 durations and 6 areas. To my mind, that's like a perfect goal setting system.
I'll tell you my perspective on this. I was recently reading a quote by Elon Musk, where he was talking about setting up crazy goals also, where he said that set up a goal that you want to achieve in 10 years and then try to achieve that in 6 months. You may miserably fail, but you will still be much ahead of person who's accepted that it will take 10 years.
Agreed. And your legacy goal, the one which I was telling you about, that 10-year thing, that can be a crazy audacious goal where people will see it and they'll say, yeah, to pagal hai. Right? But the point is that it's that thing, okay, that's my thing that I aspire to. And you're right, it might happen, even in sooner. And of course, every goal has to be accompanied by an action. The mistake that people make, like, yaar, go to likh diya, ho hi jayega. Right? But that's like, just it's a wish or a prayer. A goal without action is nothing, right? It's
correct.
Just, you're going to be running up and down, you're going to achieve nothing.
Yeah.
So you must have actions that are linked to your goals as well. And at the GBA, we created, a goal planner, and there's an app which, everyone can download for free. It's called the GBA Goal Planner, which is available on Android and iOS. But we also have a physical planner, which is actually something that I sit down with every week, and I fill every week. And no matter wherever I go in the world, wherever I travel, before even my toothbrush, my goal planner goes into my bag.
Okay.
And it's been magical.
Okay, one more thing I want to touch upon, and specifically when I look at you, I find that you do so much, you pack so much in your day. And, essentially it all boils down to how you manage your time, right? And that's a very critical piece of success.
Yeah.
How would you, look at that, and what would you suggest people? Because many times, I'm an entrepreneur myself, and I feel one of the biggest race that I have is against the watch. We are always losing track of time, and we are always running behind things and trying to cover up, and so much we can do, and we keep thinking when the day ends, we think I could have done so much, but I just couldn't finish it because I got stuck here or there. How should people look at this, and how should they plan their day in such a way that they're able to make the most out of it?
Okay, so let's take it from two areas. One is obviously, someone who has kind of, arrived, achieved, got already a team to back him up, because उनके लिए बहुत आसान होता है. They say हाँ जी delegation, और हम तो delegate कर देते हैं. But what happens to a startup who doesn't have anything, right? And right now you're either a solopreneur or micropreneur, where you have like 2-3 people and everyone's doing everything, anyway.
Exactly.
So if I go back to a time when I started, first, second year of college, and there were a time of a lot of sacrifices. Like log, movies pe ja rahe hain. Us time, PVR had just come, single cinema, plex at Vasant Vihar, all of that. And they like picture ke liye chala. I said, nahi yaar, nahi kar sakta, kaam karna hai. So, at that time, there was a stage where there was a lot of stuff that I had to do, like a lot of hats I had to, wear, myself. But even then, I think, tools that helped immensely. I mean, of course, discipline was very important. I grew up in a school, or came from a school where, there's Sanar, which is up in the hills, military school. So, वहाँ तो 6 बजे सुबह उठते थे, PT पे जाते थे, and everything was documented. Like every point of the day was actually documented till the time we went to sleep at 9:30, 10. So I think because, that compartmentalized, routine had always been a part of us. Discipline had been such an important part of us. It was also very automatic. Like, I'll tell, for your listeners and viewers, there is a template. It's called the 168-hour work week planner. Okay. And we have 168 hours in the week basically. And this is from a lady called Laura Vanderkamp. Okay, and if they go to her website, which is probably Laura Vanderkamp's 168-hour work week planner, what you do is you can download this particular template. Okay, and that template, and you don't have to start, like whatever time you wake up in the morning. So let's say 6 a.m. is, when you're waking up in the morning till 9:30, 10, whenever you're going to sleep. There's an Excel file which you can actually, pop in with all the things and activities that you either do or need to do. Right? Because the truth is, most people are not good time managers. And the thing is, if you aren't controlling your time, if you aren't managing your time, then someone else is going to manage your time for you. They're going to pop in and say, "Yaar, tu aaja," and "Haan, theek hai, main aa jata hu," and then you're stuck in traffic and all that stuff. But if you've documented your time, if you've done, like Laura Vanderkamp's 168-hour work week planner, which says, like for me, today is Wednesday, right? And I was at a BNI meeting this morning, and you asked, how are you in BNI? 15 saal ho gaye. But I know that Wednesday, okay, I'm going to leave my house in Noida at 6:05. I'll be at the Radisson Udyog Vihar at 7:05, and I'll be there till 10 o'clock. A driver's going to come, pick me up, and by 10:30 I'll be out of there. By 11:30 I'll be wherever I need to be next, etc., etc. So everything is so documented now mentally. But initially जब मैंने किया था, मैंने वही Excel file निकाली, उसी के अंदर लिखा कि बॉस इस टाइम से इस टाइम मैंने ये करना है. अगर जिम के लिए टाइम निकालना है तो जिम का ये टाइम है. Even my breakfast, lunch, dinner, all of that stuff is actually mapped in over there. So I think very, very important is that you have to have certain time management tools. Laura Vanderkamp's, time 168-hour work week is super. There is the concept of the Pomodoro, where you actually, work for, let's say, 15 minutes and then take a break. That's a mini Pomodoro. Take a break for a minute, or you do 30 minutes and 5 minutes. A lot of time management tools that are there. Discipline is going to be important, but if you document, okay, and I think one very important part, since you also mentioned Elon Musk, he said one of the biggest wins for him in life is when he started or learned to say no. Right? There are a lot of times when people say, "Arey yaar, ye kar lete hain," or "I'm coming over," and but it's not fitting into your schedule. I think you should be in a position to go ahead and say no. Right? In BNI, we have the concept of one-to-one, right? And people come in for a one-to-one, and I would say, okay, you're coming in at 5 and we're done by 6. Because otherwise, chai, coffee, either kar ke, and some one-to-ones were running for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, but it became, it was eating up time. From something else I needed to do. So now we're very, very, strict on our timelines, and also have learned to say no. So I think that's something I highly recommend. But if you're a startup, Laura Vanderkamp's 168-hour work week, that is a non-negotiable. I think it'll help immensely.
Now a little bit on the business growth and consulting that you do. When you enter a company for consulting, what is the first thing that you audit?
So it'll actually happen even before we enter a company. So a lot of companies reach out. Now consulting is not cheap. Training is okay, one day when they come in, it's a smaller mandate. If someone says consulting, for me that's okay, now we're married for the next 3 months, 6 months, whatever that duration might be. Normally we don't go beyond 1 year in any case. So even before you walk into an organization, what we're going to do is we're going to audit the financials of that company. So if it is a private limited company or it's a LLP, we'll jump onto a site like Toffler or Zoba Corp, etc. We'll see what their financials are looking like. We'll see what their numbers are looking like. We'll also see what people are saying about this company on, let's say, an Ambition Box or a Glassdoor. Basically what people are saying about this organization. Once we've done that, then we'll actually send them a diagnostic. Now that diagnostic has got certain questions in terms of what's their journey look like, what was their best year, what's their current year. It's because the thing is we need to fact find. One of the most important things as a consultant / salesperson is you have to fact find about the organization. Believe it or not, there are some companies we send that diagnostic and they're like, "Arey yaar, इसलिए तो बड़ा time लगेगा यार, ये थोड़ी भरेंगे, आप बस आ जाओ." Now that's a red flag. Okay, because the point is that if they're not even willing to fill out a diagnostic, okay, then what kind of time are they going to give you later?
Yeah.
And then what's going to happen? And you'll be seeing it in the marketing world as well, right?
Yeah,
when you come
what
in as a
change
digital
will,
marketer.
what change will we be able to drive with them? Nothing actually.
Yeah, because
they're not willing to put in the effort.
If they, absolutely right. The effort, the patience, if they don't have those things, and those are red flags. Now, once they've checked off the boxes, okay, financials are looking okay, that they have growth trajectory, or even if they're stuck, but the mindset is there to kind of move forward. They fill out the diagnostics, etc., etc. So then the things that we go in and look at is, okay, what is generally, forget what the promoters are saying, what are the staff members saying? So a lot of one-to-one conversations will happen with staff members, etc. Getting their feedback. But the top guys will always paint a rosy picture. But what are the people down below saying? I think that plays a very important role. Sometimes we even talk to their customers and we say, okay, what is your thought about this organization? How have your experiences been? And not only, so I tell the organization, I said, give me 3 stakeholders. Give me a very happy customer. Okay, give me a bloody dissatisfied customer, jo gali galoch karke, chala bhi gaya, and maybe someone who's somewhere in between in the fence, like not sure whether they should go ahead with you. So we even go into that extent. There are places where, when I have taken up a consulting job for, let's say, a company which has, dealers, in the market, so let's say wholesale markets, I would say I need to go in and speak to some of your guys and they'd be giving me the best. I'm like, no, give me a guy you've lost. Like, chodo ji, kyun jana hai? I'm like, no, because that also gives me the pain points, that gives me things that you can actually go ahead and improve in an organization.
So, in your experience of all these years of consulting these kind of companies, what do you think separates those who grow at 20% vis-a-vis those who grow at 200%?
I think action is definitely one of it. So they're willing to take action. They're willing to, because see, consultants will come in and give a lot of advice. There'll be a lot of back and forth that's going to happen. I think action and implementation are very, very big things.
Culture?
100%. Okay, 100%. So I think culture is like definitely up there as one of the top things. And they always say culture eats strategy for breakfast, right?
Yes, I think we say that in BNI.
Yeah. So I think culture is very, very important. I think mindset is very, very important, right? And again, the 10x think, the fact that, ho jayega. I think that aspect is very, very important. And I always, and even in my TEDx talk, I talk about the 3 A's, which is attitude, action, acceleration. Attitude is the first thing. Agar attitude sahi hai, to boss sab sahi hai. Okay, with the attitude has to come action. So if you're actually moving on things, executing, implementing, I think that's very important. And the third is acceleration, which is the magic variable. What happens is sometimes when people get comfortable, okay, they've gone from 5 to 25, okay, they've gone from 50 to 100. They're like, ab to ho gaya, now thodi aaram kar lete hain. No, boss, now when you have the momentum, now is the time to push the pedal to the metal and make your gadi run even faster. You have the momentum, you have the confidence, you have the clients, you have everything going for you right now. It's not the time to take it easy. It's actually time to press down and move faster. So attitude, action, acceleration, I think those are, the cores of our philosophy as well.
The last thing that you said is just resonates with me so much, and this is such a common sighting that you see across the companies or even in our own habits. For example, you start going to gym and then you lose 5 kg and then you start eating samosas again, or you start studying and you're able to crack a certain level, then you slow it down. But what you're saying is you don't need to slow down, you actually need to push the pedal harder at that moment because you built the momentum. And if you lose the momentum, you're going to go back to the same place, right?
100%. I'll give you an example of, look at cricket, okay, like everyone loves Virat Kohli. Now, there was a time when Virat, had made his way into the Indian team and, he'd got a few centuries and everything else. Now, it was possible that he could have said, yaar, main to pahunch gaya Indian team mein, now my place is kind of, guaranteed and everything else. But at that time, he also saw that, he was putting on weight, he was not, being too fit and everything else. And I think he took a decision that, okay, everything changes, so the attitude came into play that, okay, I'm going to be, really working on my fitness. And you see Virat Kohli of, 11, 12, 13 at that time. You see Virat Kohli 2016 and beyond, totally different. And as Kohli started getting his 40th century, his 45th century, his 50th century, he wasn't slowing down. He's actually training harder and harder because he had a goal. Right, and that was Tendulkar's 100. He said, Tendulkar ne 100 mare, to main bhi marunga. And I think now he's probably, got towards the 80s. I think he's probably 84, 85, 100s. But he's still, working on his fitness. He's still got his, T20 game going and his ODI game going. He said, boss, Tendulkar ka number to maine hit karna hi karna hai. Even today, when a bowler is coming to bowl at Virat Kohli, matlab thoda hilta hai wo. Matlab, boss, Virat Kohli khada hai dusre side pe. So that's what you want. You want, when you walk into a meeting, okay, and your competitor sees you, they're like, bhai, wo banda aa gaya, bag utha ke, main to cut raha hu yahan se. Because how do I compete with that person? So I tell my team all the time. I said, when you go in as consortium, when you go in, the competitors should be like, "Arey consortium wale aa gaye, chalo chodo, yahan to kuch nahi ho sakta." So that is how much of a role acceleration can actually play. And even we, we're not slowing down. We're pushing even faster.
So Gaurav, you've done a lot. You've achieved a lot. You've probably on your dream run right now, if I could take the liberty to say that.
Sure.
Where do you see yourself and your company in next 5 years?
Okay, so I'll give you an interesting take on this one, okay, and this is not when people have ever heard this one before. So I was with one of my coaches and mentors, a few months ago, and, he asked me, he said, GB, what will be your HBV? Okay, and that's your highest, best version of yourself, okay, ever. Like, when it's time to hang up the boots, I think it'll be a great, thought for everyone, even who's listening in to think about. So what is your highest, best version? And when I started writing this down, I started thinking, okay, will it be in terms of turnover? Will it be in terms of number of clients? Will it be in terms of, maybe impact, etc., etc. And I said, if one really has to think crazy, okay, one really has to think, audaciously insane goal. So I wrote down something, and of course I made a slide and I presented this, and on that slide there was a red fort. He says, "Samajh nahi aa raha." I said, "Let me zoom in a little bit more." Okay, and I said the date, okay, was the 15th of August 2041, and so we're talking about maybe 15 years from that date, and it's me and addressing the nation. So he says, "I don't understand." I said, "What's there not to understand?" I said, "I want to be the Prime Minister of India. So by the 15th of August 2041, I want to be the PM of India." He's like, "Man, that's crazy." I said, "But highest, best version." I said, "That's what I think it should be." I said, "Look, how much, money, how many cars, how many homes, how many factories, how many all of that?" I said, "If you really want to impact like which probably India will be 1.7 billion people by that time." I said, so the HBV is that. So I know it's a little crazy, a little out there, but I think you're the first guys who actually heard it.
Yeah.
But actually, that is even my legacy goal in my goal planner. It says, and I write that down every Saturday night or Sunday whenever I write my goals, I write that goal down. So I think that would probably be, the HBV version. And people are like, "Oh, but what political party? Where will the money come from?" I'm like, dude, when the time's going to come, the time's going to come. So to answer your question, that would be the answer to that one.
Great. And now in these times of rapid changes happening every day and disruption happening everywhere, what advice would you have for startup founders and entrepreneurs who want to 10x their company? What probably would be your top 3 advices to a startup founder?
Interesting question. So let's say top 3, okay, and I'm going to take the first one from Grant Cardone, okay, and Grant Cardone, would say this one thing. He said, and I'll give you the Hindi version first and the English version, बहाने बना लो या पैसे कमा लो, ठीक है, आप दोनों नहीं कर पाओगे. So either you make money or you make excuses, you can't do both. Okay, so that's my first piece of advice, that there'll be all the reasons in the world, okay, to make excuses, don't make them. I mean, one of the other bands that I actually wear, on my hand, it says, "I do whatever it takes, no excuses." Okay, so it's something that I always, keep on
reminding yourself.
Yeah. So again, and I tell this every time to myself, and I get some excuses popping up in my head. I'm like, "Boss, बहाने बना लो या पैसे कमा लो." Okay, and if it's not money, बहाने बना लो या एक अच्छी life create कर लो. अब दोनों नहीं कर पाओगे if money is not your thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's my first one. That okay, no excuses. I think the other one, and we talk about the world of AI, and everyone's like, AI क्या करने वाला है? And I was telling this to somebody recently. I'm like, AI is something that in our school, which was Sina, we've been practicing for hundreds of years. And they're like, कैसे हो सकता है? They're like, AI तो अभी आया है. I'm like, आप समझे नहीं ऐसे. AI is not artificial intelligence. AI is adapted intelligence. So you have to keep adapting. Okay, and in school we should run the 3,000 meter race, which is 3 kilometers, and you're running on this field, and all the people who qualified, they would just shut their ears and eyes, they just keep their head down and just run. So just like that, things are going to keep happening in this world. There are things that you can't control, Okay, there are things that is not in your hands, but you just keep going. Okay, so keep going out there and keep just keep going. Okay, keep adapting to as situations evolve, but just get your head down and run. So I think that's my second piece of advice. So I think, and the third one, and which is very, very critical in today's world, is that again we spoke about omnipresence. It's about showing up in person, your personal brand. So I think just take every opportunity that you can get to show up on a stage. Okay, to show up on a podcast, to show up at an event, to show up at a networking event. And once you're there, don't come out there to sell, come out there to serve. Okay, again, Grant Cardone's philosophy: serve, don't sell. Okay, and the thing is, once you've served people, they will want to come and they will want to give back. It's reciprocity. It's about the world works on that principle as well. So show up, work towards omnipresence. Omnipresence is sab jagah dikhte ho, right? So hence, like you said, go to YouTube and you type out your name. You're showing up everywhere. You're on PR pieces. You're everywhere you possibly can be. And omnipresence can happen almost for free, right? When you're starting out, at least. So that would be my piece of advice there.
Excellent. Such beautiful advices and such practical things that you talked about. It's been a pleasure to host you, and it's a pleasure to listen to your wisdom. Thank you so much for coming over.
Thank you. It's all about the host and asking the right questions and being a great listener, which you have been. So thank you so much on that side as well.
Pleasure.
Awesome.